First things first, this is not a clickbait, and everything you will see was done without the use of mods, cheats or any tools whatsoever. World settings are all set to normal as this is my main playthrough world. Also, I apologize for the sound of my voice, I am sick at the time of recording. Second of all, oh my god, it took me hours. But I have actually reached the inside of the tree and seen what's behind and below the tree. But let's talk about why it was so difficult. The tree island is protected by a long red protective wall that players cannot pass through. Thanks to our flying pals, players have discovered that you can fly over the red wall and safely land on the tree island. The island has surface you can walk and even build on, which makes for a cool base area. But then the second and the main obstacle becomes obvious fast. There is another wall, an invisible wall. This wall cannot be walked on top of like the red one and is the size of the entire top left corner of the map. It can be climbed but not climbed over, flown over, and no pals can pass through it either. Players have attempted to get past it and reach the tree, but there is one major detail that not many know. It is not actually a wall, it's an object. Well, sort of. I call it the gravitation zone. You see, anything that manages to get inside the zone gets pushed downwards with high strength. The moment a player gets pushed downwards, the surrounding world disappears and the player starts falling into the endless void below the world until the player gets unstuck by the game and moved to the last base the player has teleported to. The other effect of the zone is that it actively pushes the player away and out of the zone. If you try to glitch through the zone by climbing inside, the zone pushes the player out until the player is outside and clinging to the outer walls of the zone. The last fact of the zone is that if a player manages to get inside, they cannot move at all. Any directional movement doesn't work. It feels like the player is actively stuck inside of an object. If the player tries to crouch inside, they get stuck in the crouching position, and if the player tries to jump or use the grapple hook, they get pushed either out of the zone or under the world, resetting any progress the player made towards the tree. So, while I was desperately attempting to get inside of the zone, I learned one crucial thing. The ground inside the zone is solid and can be stood, even built upon. You can actively build inside of the zone and even interact with items. So I just had one question on my mind. Can you move through the zone without actually moving? The answer? Beds. Beds are the key to the tree. You see, if you build a platform slightly behind the invisible zone, build a roof and place a bed, you can get moved inside of the zone by resting in the bed. So I tried this and it worked. I was now inside of the zone. The camera glitched inside of my character like it was pushed downwards by gravity and I couldn't move at all. But I could still kinda see what's in front of me and build further. I was actually able to summon my Anubis inside the zone and help me build the beds faster. Sometimes the Anubis would not move, and sometimes if he was standing on solid ground, would move a few steps to finish the task. Side note, while mounted on any rideable pal, they wouldn't move, and attempting to get off the mount would result in falling through the world. So I placed another bed, went to sleep, and I got pushed outside. This was a problem. If the zone is pushing the player out non-stop, how can we move inside? Well, I learned that the zone has kind of like two types of push-away forces. One that constantly pushes the player away if the player is not standing on or attached to anything, and one that seems to be active only the first few meters of the zone once entered. So I had to place down an object inside the zone that would always prevent me from being pushed outside of the zone. I decided to use wardrobe storage. With a careful placement of the beds and the wardrobes, I slowly started to progress further inside the zone without being pushed out. After a few meters traveled, the zone has suddenly stopped pushing me out. I have now crossed the event horizon and could stay on top of my beds without the fear of being pushed all the way back to the start. I still could not move, and jumping or grappling still either pushed me below the map or out of the zone. Now comes the part that took literally hours for me to do. Actually move and get to the tree. I did not record all of my journey there because I value my hard drive space, but there were some complications along the way I want to show you. So, for hours, I just kept putting down platforms, roofs and beds to move myself closer to the tree. If you've seen how the outside of the tree looks, you will have noticed there are some cliffs at the bottom of the tree. Yep, I had to climb those using only beds and platforms. These cliffs and slopes took double the effort and time to climb up, as I had to carefully put down platforms to to put down beds on, rinse and repeat until I got to the top. Once on top of the first big rocks, I decided to put down a base. At this point I had no idea if teleporting to the base would help me recover, but it was worth to have at least some hope of a checkpoint after the long journey. At this point I wanted to see if riding a pal would help me move faster, so I took the risk and hopped on my jet dragon. This was a mistake. I could not move, I could not grapple or do anything at all. At this point the only thing left to do was to fall down and hope my base checkpoint would save me. I got teleported to the base and was being actively pushed out of the zone mid-air. Thankfully I put down some beds to hop on, but my character would still be in a weird kind of state that put me in the bed sideways, and once I got up I would still be pushed away from the zone mid-air. Thankfully I managed to snap out of this weird state by pressing crouch while in the bed, snapping me back in the position and preventing me from being pushed away again. At this point I was anxious and got reminded that this will have to be done the only way available, the hard way, using beds. I took in the view of the tree, looked around to see nothing but ground and rocks, and continued my journey. Another big climb later, I started to see the roots of the tree. Still, there was nothing notable around to look at besides the view of the tree. I continued climbing until I have reached the base of the tree. I put down a base and tried building on the tree itself to get inside. The issue was that the tree itself seems to be another object that has no ground, meaning I could not build anything whatsoever on top of the tree. It seemed like my journey would end here. There was no other way to go up. I tried falling through the world, grappling on the base of the tree, tried using my flying pulse, but nothing worked. I was ready to call it quits, get some footage recorded and go to bed. But then I noticed something. There seemed to be a gap directly below the tree where the highest peak of the island itself was located. If I managed to climb on top of that hill, I will be able to see the whole island, including what no one has yet seen, the backside of the island. This was another hard journey, as trying to climb the final hill would force me to make very small gaps between my platforms to reach my next bed. This took roughly another hour, but I could smell it. The top of the hill was close. At this point I could see the inside of the tree, or rather the hollow part. It was just a bunch of textures. Same goes for the crown of the tree. It was all just a bunch of textures. There was nothing inside of them, no objects, no special looking areas, just a bunch of textures. That was it. That was the tree. I could have called it there, but it took so long to get to this point. I just had to at least see the back of the island. So, after some more time climbing up, I finally reached the hilltop. I put down the base and looked around. It was just a big empty remaining space of the island that continued further into the ocean. There was nothing, just an interesting view of the unfinished area that might at some point become enterable with content updates. I had one more idea to try and look into the hollow part of the tree. I teleported to my checkpoint base and while clinging to the air, let my character get pushed back out of the zone slowly. The pushback was so nicely aligned that I managed to see the inside of the tree. Once again, it was just textures. I tried to see if I can build any platforms inside, but it was still a no. So, at this point, I was done. I reached the tree. I looked up online if anyone has done this before I attempted the journey, but to my surprise, I have not seen anyone reach this point of the island. Some got super close to the tree, some got close to the crown of the tree, but I haven't seen anyone actually get inside of the tree or even see what's on the other side of the island. I think I can allow myself to claim this achievement without the use of any third-party tools, mods, or changing the world settings. I have beat the gravitation zone, and in the honor of my achievement, I named the center hill of the island the Pumpkin Hill, right below the tree itself. Feeling satisfied, I turned off the recording and closed the game.